Yay! What is up, everyone? Happy Monday to you. Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 262. I have half of my hair gone. That's basically what I realized when I'm sitting here in this light. I look like the guy from The Fifth Element. Not Gary Pullman, but it's the evil villain. What was that, Alex? Gary Oldman. Alex Varner from the background with Gary Oldman. I look like Gary Oldman from The Fifth Element.
Well, you look very cool and hip from this side.
From the side, it's fine. Okay, anyways. Very excited about tonight's show because we have a guest on that we haven't had on for years. I looked through the back catalog just now to see what was the last time we actually had him on, and I think it was 2015. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it has been nearly 4 years since we've had.
That's so crazy.
It is crazy. That is not allowed ever again.
We have been slacking.
We have been. Our guest tonight, Alex Varner, is going to be joining us here in just a second. And we're going to talk all about the Dipsea Race. So this isn't I don't even want to get into it yet. This is the pre-show. So sit back, relax. I'm very excited about tonight's show. As you can tell, Ginger Runner Live episode number 262
begins now.
Ginger Runner.
Yay! What is up, everybody? Welcome to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 262. So excited to have everyone here joining us tonight. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedules to spend a little bit of it with us. I am your host, Ethan Newberry.
Hi, Ethan.
Hi.
I'm Kim.
Good.
Now that we each know our own names.
We're going to get this. One of these episodes, we're going to nail it, and it's going to freak us out, I think.
Probably, yes.
Yes. Very excited about tonight's episode. We're joined by a guest that hasn't been on this show for nearly 4 years. For no other reason than Kim and I have been slacking because he has been up to a lot. We're going to find out what he's been up to over the last few years. More specifically in the last 24 hours, because yesterday he ran and did something pretty incredible at the Dipsea Race. This is one of those historic races that I know surface amounts about. I know all about it. I've run some of the course because of other races and I've been in that region. But the Dipsea Race is one of those historic events that people talk about, train for, think, eat, breathe, and live their whole life. It's just one of those really special local races that takes place in Mill Valley. I'm probably going to be corrected because it's probably technically Marin. I don't know. So Alex is going to school us on what the Dipsea is and what he did this weekend there.
Yeah, there's a lot of people in the chat room that only are kind of familiar with the race. So
right.
I think once we get into the meat of it, we can kind of explain.
And that's where I'm at with it, is because I have lots of friends that have run it. Alex is one of those people who has run it and done some historic runs there. But I know just that surface amount. And I even told Alex today, I'm like, I want to be schooled. Like, give me the full education because I'm interested. I've been interested. Let's really get into the nitty gritty. But before we introduce our guests, we have some individuals that we like to thank here on Ginger Runner Live, specifically our Patreon supporters. It is because of them that we're able to do this show week in, week out, month after month, now going on 5 and almost a half years of Ginger Runner Live, plus all of our reviews. There's a new review dropping tomorrow. All of our films. There's a new film summiting Bandera Mountain last week that dropped using some 360 footage and editing through that. So you can go check out those videos right now on this channel. But it's because of our Patreon supporters that we're able to do projects like that and lots to come. The summer is banging. It's going to be so much fun. 3 individuals in particular at that top tier. Chris Lee out of Hong Kong has an amazing organization called Trailblazer. They showcase all the amazing trails in Hong Kong, just outside of the city. If you ever find yourself in that region for a race or just for being a tourist or just checking out the area, reach out to Chris and his organization Trailblazer. He will take you under his wing and show you all the great stuff to visit, to see, to do in Hong Kong. Rick Bjarnason and his team at cheekymonkeymedia.ca, they redid the gingerrunner.com website. They're an amazing group of web designers and web gurus. Rick himself is an ultra runner training for Sinister 7 and Fat Dog 120, the big race up in BC. Rick's a stout ultra runner, and it's awesome to have him on board. And finally, Brian Sands, longtime supporter, incredible, inspiring journey. Lost over 100 pounds, trained for his first marathon, ran it, crushed it, first 50K, ran it, crushed it. We got to see him this last weekend run a local race here in Washington, which is pretty cool. He traveled out to run this race because he's coming back from injury. training up for some of his big goals this year, and it's just always awesome to see Brian crush his goals, because he is an inspiring individual that can teach us all that anyone can run and have fun with it and set goals and crush them. So that is it. So, oh yeah, and of course we're live.
We are live.
Yeah.
So if you guys have questions for our wonderful guest, Alex, please pop them into the chat room. We'll be pulling them throughout the hour. Lots of questions rolling in already.
Oh, I bet. And I just want to get Alex introduced. So without further ado, our wonderful guest after too long of a hiatus, Alex Varner.
Yay!
You've been so patient. Thank
back.
you. You've been sitting in this room for 4 years waiting for this show to happen.
Yeah, right. Like no life things have happened. There
Yeah,
hasn't
no
been a
life stuff has
kid
happened
or-
at all.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So let's actually start there, man. So what has been going on in the Alex Varner life? Because we can get as specific or as general as you like. I know there was a period with ultra running where we were seeing you race these huge races and winning or podiuming, and then it felt like we started to miss you at some of these big ultra events. And I know that a lot of life stuff and family stuff happened, but what sort of what's happened in the last few years with Alex Varner?
I think. Well, I had a child, or my wife.
That's a
had
big
child.
thing. Yeah.
Yay!
So she's now 2 and a couple months.
Wow.
So she's running around and wreaking havoc on everything. But she's fantastic, and we love her. Aside from that, I had a couple of injuries that kind of seemed to crop up at inopportune times. Noticeably, it started in like 2016, where I had like a hip glute issue that took 5 months to figure out. And I finally got healthy, and I ran the World Trail Championships in Portugal that year in like October.
That's right.
And then that was 2016 and 2017. I had like an Achilles issue. Was that 2018? I don't know. An Achilles issue one of the last couple of years that lasted like 3 or 4 months. Just kind of strings of little things that were just super annoying and took a while to resolve. And as a result, I just realized I can't. It's not that I can't. I just don't want and like to run the super long races now. I think the last like 50 miler I did was that race in Portugal. Since then, I really like 50K. That's a fun distance. You can get it done in a good amount of time. You know, get a good suffer on, but not go really, really deep into the well like I found that I tend to do in the 50 and 100. Well, the 100 miler I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was kind of dealing with injuries, running shorter stuff. I really wanted to run some cross country, which I've done the last couple of years in the fall. I think I kind of got away from that. And bringing that back as part of the routine made a big difference. And now had a good spring, been healthy for like 10 months solid now. Felt pretty good. So yeah, just trying to keep that streak rolling.
Was the goal ever for you to be, because I know that you've had a career, you have a family, and running has been passion for you. Has it ever been the goal to be a professional runner? Has that goal changed in the last few years since we've seen you now with sort of like just changing of goals? Has that sort of shifted, like your outlook on the sport? Is it more of a hobby, or where you at now?
I've never wanted to be a full-time professional runner. I think that is a tremendous amount of pressure, and I really enjoy running for the sake of running. It's fun. It's an escape. You know, if I'm getting out for an hour during the day, 3 or 4 times a week, it's me time. It's kind of meditative. It's zen. And having that, if that were to be kind of what I did for a living, it would put some pressure on it that I don't want to be there. I'm lucky enough where like I'm still on the Nike trail team, and our manager Pat is fantastic. They understand, the number of races they expect you to do is very manageable, to stay, on contract schedule and that sort of thing. It's really, really good in that they understand, like, if you're running proper long trail races, you can't do more than a couple a year.
Right.
If you want to really get fit for it, look at like the pro marathoners. They run maybe 2 races a year. This is not that we're not that fast, but it's the same level of preparation and dedication and time that goes in to training for these things. if not more on like an hourly basis, because if you're training for, I'm not, but like if you're training for a 100-mile race, you've got to do some 30, 40, 50-mile training runs in there. So yeah, it's never been a goal to be a pro runner. I like having a full-time job. It keeps balance. It makes me find time to run, and it doesn't dictate my life. And I don't think I want that. I don't want that to change.
It's refreshing. It's because it's so often like we'll have guests on the show who are professional runners, and it is wow. It's it's an inspiring life to live and to sort of follow, and to see that sort of romantic side of being able to spend every waking moment outdoors, and that's part of it, But there's also something to be said about finding that balance between everyday life, your love of running, not letting that love dissipate because it becomes work. And the second that becomes a thing, it sort of takes that passion away from it. So I don't know, that's super refreshing, and I love hearing that from you. Live questions. I'm seeing a bunch being pulled aside here. So while we've got Alex in the live chat room, let's get to some of those.
Sure. Question from Stuart in the chat room. Stuart says, Alex, how do you manage coming back from injury? I've pretty much been injured since January and just about ready to start training. So any tips on not going too intense too soon?
You can't do too little. You really can't. I've come back from knee surgery and stress fractures, and I think on those times I was literally running like a minute at a time and walking for 2 and starting there, and you kind of build and you get a plateau and you build, and it took 2-3 months before I was running back at like 50-60% of volume. If you really want to make sure that everything's working and fixed and healed, that's the way to do it. I know a lot of people who jump right back in too quickly, and that the injury that they were suffering from might be healed, but you're inevitably compensating in some way. And I think that it ultimately will set you back further if you're unable to kind of maintain what you're doing. So just super cautious. If you're wondering about running like the extra mile or another 10 minutes, don't. Like, you think about what you're going to gain from it as opposed to what you might lose. It puts it in perspective a little bit better.
Yeah.
I kind of want to start talking about community, just because we talked a little bit about your history with the sport and ultra, but then also kind of pulling back with injury and that sort of thing. Have you been able to maintain that sense of community or being a part of that community? Because I know Marin, I know that whole region is such a wonderful place for trail runners, but there's this element that there's a lot of elite runners in that region that train constantly and are doing workouts every week and that sort of thing. Have you been able to maintain a presence in that community? Is that something that's still important to you? And how has that sort of been affected over the last few years?
It's definitely declined. Just with family obligations, full-time job, it's something that I'm just not able to kind of be as big a part of. I'd like to be more, but I'm completely okay with where things are now. It's to the point where, like, if I can sneak in a run, I've just got to go. It's hard for me to make running plans with people during the week because, like, I get off work, I drive to daycare, I run a couple miles, I pick my child up, run a couple more miles with her.
Right.
Like, the timing is just off, and if like it's so tight and difficult for me to be on time, for other people to be on time, that it's just not worth it. So unfortunately, like, I haven't been as big a part of it as I would like to. But it's fun following along. As you said, Marin is a bunch of people locally doing a lot of good things. Yeah, they're trying to keep up with them as best I can. But for the most part, it's definitely more of a solo endeavor for the most part.
I feel like that's also a pretty standard thing. Hearing from like people who become fathers or mothers or family, and that whole element, it just is so much additional work and time, and important, right? It's important work and time. It's not like, oh, I got a family now, I got to go run, that sort of thing. It's good. It's all really good stuff. So I can only imagine the amount of time that takes. We have a dog. That takes up all of it.
Arguably, from what I've heard, dogs or puppies at least are a little bit harder than children at times.
Okay, great. I'm glad to hear that.
Because you can at least take the kid with you everywhere. Like, nobody's ever turned down a human baby. Like,
that's a valid point.
Restaurant. Whereas with dogs, it's a little different. But
and I wouldn't think about taking a baby to like a doggy daycare place. Like, can you guys take care of my baby? I want to get into this, man. Oh, do you have? Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah,
Live
let's
question.
take one more live question before we dig in.
Dipsea.
Question from Nathaniel in the chat room. Nathaniel says, Alex, you work full time and have a family. How do you keep the proverbial competitive fire lit with all those obligations?
It's arguably a little bit easier just because I get to race less frequently. I was looking back at some of past years, and there were years when I raced like 35 times in a calendar year. And it was shorter stuff. But I'd run like 8 cross-country races. I'd run several 10Ks, a bunch of 5Ks, like, and maybe 1 or 2 marathons.
Wow.
And that's down to like, now I think I've raced 3 times so far this year. And I will race once, maybe twice more before the end of the summer. And then depending on the cross-country season, and I'm doing New York Marathon again. But like right now, there are only 2 more races on the official calendar that I've got scheduled out between now and the end of the year. So when I have to pick and choose in that way and really kind of focus on certain races, I want to show up and do well. I have to take advantage of it. And so it's arguably easier to be competitive and want to keep that fire alive and training for them because I don't get a lot of shots at it.
Right.
So it's, you can kind of get lulled into complacency. It's like, oh, hi, there's my small naked child. Okay. Hi.
Hi.
You say hi?
She can't hear us, but
she can't hear you. But when I have to pick and choose like that, I definitely have a desire to do well, and so in my training, it becomes a little bit more focused, and the motivation is definitely a little bit, arguably more there than it was when I could race every weekend.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's. I'm not even trying to make a comparison. I was going it's like eating cake every birthday, where all of a sudden it tastes really good, and you got a year before you get to eat cake again. I'm like, that doesn't. What a terrible analogy.
You just want to talk about cake.
I just want to talk about cake. Let's be honest. I'm craving cake. I want to start talking about Dipsea. Kids are freaking awesome. Because she can't even hear us. She just sees smiling and laughing, and she's
just watching.
Totally contagious. It's great.
But I think when we had Dom and Katie Grossman on, and they had Lindy, that was one of like the biggest. Everybody just loved being able to see Lindy for the whole show.
And your daughter might also be thinking, is that Gary Oldman from The Fifth Element? I want to start talking Dipsea because I know we have a lot of Dipsea fans and followers in the chat room who are really curious about this too. But I know the basics. If you could give us the most politest of schooling on what the Dipsea is and its history, when did it start? What is important about it, and what draws people to this historic race?
Yeah, so the first Dipsea was run in 1905. Wow. For what it's worth, I'm just reading this off the website, so it's not like I have this contained in my brain.
You didn't need to let us know that.
We can all bring it. We can all pull up a tab. We can all follow along.
But they've all got it's been run now 109 times. It took a couple years off, I think, around World War II. But since then, it's been run, basically every year, other than a couple.
Wow.
So this was the 109th running. I think it's the oldest trail race in the country and the second oldest race in the U.S. behind Boston Marathon.
Wow.
That's what they say. Full disclosure, I'm not 100% sure that it is a verifiable fact, but I don't know many other races that are at 109 years.
Yeah.
It started out as 2 guys trying to race from Mill Valley. It starts in downtown Mill Valley. Mm-hmm. So you are correct, which is in Marin County, and it runs up and over 2 ridges and finishes down at Stinson Beach. It's called the Dipsea because the first person to win took a dip in the sea, and that's where the name comes from. It's staggered on age and gender. They have a statistician who actually, the guy retired this year. This was his last year doing it, but they have another guy who's in and taking care of it. But I don't think the handicaps have been altered for many years now.
Okay.
It used to be individually handicapped, like by person.
By person. Okay.
And then when it got big enough, they kind of standardized it. And so now it's based on age and gender, and you were in, so it goes from AAA, single A, to Z, and then there's Scratch. And Scratch is the people who have 0 head start minutes.
Okay.
And those are men 19 to 31. So, and then you get like a minute of 31, and then you're in Group Z for 7 years. This is as a man. And then if you're a woman, I think the woman's Scratch is group like N, maybe.
Okay.
Hold up here. But they get 7 or 8 minutes. Let's see here. On where'd this go? Women, Group R. Sorry. So they get an 8-minute head start on the Scratch man. And there's the way as a result, it works kind of funny in that there's a sweet spot for age groupers that they hit. Like,
yeah, that was my next question. There has to be the perfect age and demographic, right?
So it's like mid to late 50s, early 60s. For that age group, if you can run your age in minutes on the course, so if you're 62 and you can run a 62-minute Dipsea, that will usually put you very near the front.
Wow.
The guy who won this year, he's won it 4 times, Brian Pilcher. He ran, let's see, I think he ran 59 and a half minutes this year.
Okay.
So he had a 13-minute head start, so that put him at 46 and a half minutes on the clock.
Wow.
And it's, people wonder, like, is this fair? Why, like, because nobody from Scratch or Group C or even X and Y has won the race in quite some time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it definitely obviously favors the younger, because I've also been in the race when a 9-year-old girl won it, and she was followed up 8 seconds later by a 70-year-old woman. They started in the same group, ran the whole race together. And
that blows my mind.
So it definitely favors really good age groupers. You can't just be an average or above average age grouper. You have to be a really good age grouper,
right?
To do well at the thing.
Okay.
So to that point, I think it is fair. It's kind of not frustrating. You just kind of know as a young guy or woman with very few head start minutes that probably aren't going to win. You can run the best race of your life, and somebody has a pretty good day, and if they're a really good age grouper, they have enough minutes on you to stay in front. But it kind of makes it fun because I passed everybody except 2 this year, and like the last 5 people I passed, it was like a 33-year-old woman, a 47-year-old woman who's won the last 2 years, 62-year-old woman, 58-year-old guy, and like another 45-year-old woman. Like in the last mile, like that doesn't happen. You don't get that experience in any other race.
It's already. I can tell that there's a bit. I'm not confused, but I can tell that there's a lot. There's a lot of specific.
Your haircut says otherwise.
My haircut is. Yeah, it's all over the board. But I can tell there's a lot of intricacies to this race. Things that, I can't even imagine another race putting these sort of policies in place without people being up in arms. So has there been a shift in these policies? Was there a year that they were like, we need to start doing the handicaps and like figuring that out? Or like, it hasn't always been like this, right?
It's basically always been handicapped.
Wow.
They've been around for decades. They just shifted, they've moved, they've changed. People have refined them, and they've pretty much, it's probably about as good as they're going to get right now.
Okay.
Things that have changed, the biggest things that have changed are the course and the winner's penalty.
So why has the course changed?
Permitting and number of people in the
Interesting.
race. Very simple. It runs through a national monument in Muir Woods. So there are 1,500 people running across a 2-foot wide wooden plank bridge in a creek that is what they claim has like endangered salmon spawning in it in the spring. So they're very, very aware of the impact it has on the areas. It's, it goes up staircases that are hidden in Mill Valley, like they're 4 or 5 feet wide. It's just become prohibitive to have an open course. There's footage online, I think there's some on YouTube, of races from decades ago, and you can see 4 different people on 4 different paths on a hillside.
Wow.
Like there's one dude's head at the bottom, there's another guy full body, another guy 3 feet above him full body, and then somebody's feet all up on the scale on 4 different trails on this hillside. And as a result, it was originally completely open. It was just however you want to get to the beach, get to the beach.
Wow.
That's it. Just go. And now it's become, there's accepted routes. There are still some shortcuts involved. There are certain areas where you are not allowed to take shortcuts or alternate routes because of the permitting. Like in the Mirror Woods, you have to stay on the trail.
Got it.
And they will disqualify you if they see you off trail. There were other places where 10, 15 years ago, you could take a shortcut, and now the impact has become such that the landowners, whether it be like the National Recreation Golden Gate or private land, don't want you. So they've narrowed it down. And there are other places where there are ways you can go that people don't know. Most people don't know. It's funny because people refer to like shortcuts towards the end of the race. There's 2 at the end of the race. There's door number 1. And then Kiernan's Crossing. And those are quote shortcuts, but they're now the consensus route.
Oh, interesting.
Once upon a time, they're not, if you ever run the Dipsea Trail to Stinson, you are on a part that's called the Moors now, which has been completely redone. It's super buffed out, gorgeous, great, very much a thoroughfare for hiking and for, sustainability as far as the trail's concerned. And the only time you ever take these 2 shortcuts are on race day because they're covered in poison oak. They're literally just opened for race day. They exist year-round, but you don't take them because they're completely overgrown. So the course has changed a lot, and then the winner's penalty. This guy Sal Vasquez, he won 7 Dipseas. He won 4 in a row, and they got tired of him winning, so they penalized him, so he wouldn't win again. And it used to be, when I started running the race, I first ran it in 2003, that if you won, you got a 3-minute penalty, and then a 2-minute penalty the following year, and then a 1 minute. So they kind of
tiered you out a couple years, yeah.
Now it's 3 years of 1-minute penalties.
Okay.
So what that means is it gets confusing because if you age up into a next group, you go back because you're penalized, or if you don't age up in a year, then you get bumped back a year.
Right.
I always thought it'd be really funny to win the race from scratch and have to start at -1 minute. Conceivably that could happen if somebody from scratch were to win it, but you'd have to have somebody who's considerably faster than any of us who've run it so far. There are people out there who could do it, but they just have to take the time and run the race. So those have changed as well, and I think it makes it interesting. It didn't help or hurt, I should say, the woman who won the last 2 years, because she won at 46, got a minute penalty, ran 2.5 minutes faster the following year, and got another minute penalty, despite having that minute. So
right.
Some people it works in their favor. Some people it clearly doesn't make a difference. But they're just simply trying to prevent people from winning multiple years in a row.
Like, I slowly feel my brain melting, thinking like, well, what would my penalty be? Well, no, is it a penalty or is it like scratching? I'm fascinated by this because I think this is a brilliant way to. I am a huge advocate for sort of like equalizing everything because as someone who's been a mid-packer and spent most of my time out there a lot longer than I think you and I have even run races together, but not together. Like you finished the day before me. And part of me is like, I wish the elites could feel what it's like to run, my time and that sort of thing. This is a really interesting way to sort of bring the entire field and whole spectrum, just smush it together.
Also feels like it's like a game aspect.
There's a game to it. There's a bit of a
It's
game.
very much an aspect of you can get out on the trail and know the trail and train on the trail, which I do every year. But you can't train for the people in the way.
Interesting.
So there are crowds. They occur at different places depending on the year, depending on the conditions. The field changes. So sometimes you'll hit a crowd at the bottom of the first flight of stairs, 0.4 miles into the race, and other times you won't hit them until the top flight. And then you're basically, the trail narrows and widens and narrows and widens. So you go from, 3 flights of stairs that are 5 feet wide to a road, and you can easily pass people on, a 2-lane road. And then it goes back to a trail. At one point, a lot of points, it comes down to single track, like 8 inches of single track.
Wow.
And you're trying to get around people. There was a downed tree this year that you had to duck under. Then it opens back up, then it closes. So there's all sorts of stuff where like you really have to plan not only how you're going to pace it, but your route on that section of trail. You have to figure out where most people will go and figure out where there will be room for you to go as somebody who's going past people.
Right.
And there are several sections where there are stairs on one part of the trail, and then just to the left there are gullies, which you can hop into and just run down the gully.
Wow.
Because there are people on the stairs in your way. There's a lot of yelling on your left. A lot of elbows are exchanged just because it's a narrow trail and people are running and elbows are out, and it happens. But it's a whole other element to the race. I have friends who have run it and loved it. Like Patty O'Leary ran it for the first time, and Jorge did as well. And they both really, really enjoyed it. Like you can tell at the finish, like it kind of sparked something that I don't know that they knew it could.
Oh, yeah.
And then I've had friends who run it and they hated it. Like they crossed the finish line and were like, I'm never doing this again. Like never. I'm livid. I'm so annoyed with passing all these people.
Wow.
It's narrow trail. So it's not for everybody. But I think it is something certainly to like. It's certainly an experience.
I'm totally into it. Like even never having raced it or even seen the race take place, I'm just like, I'm into this.
It would be very fascinating.
Totally.
Like, to kind of hear about it and see it go down.
I want to see a 70-year-old woman and a 9-year-old like racing together and
On the finishing
beating
line,
Alex Varner.
Yeah.
Like, that'd be so funny. We have tons of live questions. Kim has been very patient. Go ahead, babe.
This question's from Crispin. Crispin asked, Alex, at your speed, what is the biggest bottleneck on course?
The stairs. Generally, they redid they've been since I started running, they've redone all 3 flights of stairs. And this year they redid the second flight, which is probably the steepest. And they put in guardrails on either side, which were not there last time, or handrails.
Oh, on both sides.
On both sides. So it is very constricting. So there's bottlenecks there. And then for me, there's 2 big climbs. You go up to what's called Windy Gap, and then you drop down into Mere Woods, and then you climb up to Cardiac, and then it's 2.5 miles to the beach. So the first 3 or 4, it's 5-minute section from out of the bottom of Mere Woods is called Dynamite and Upper Dynamite, and it's single track, it's twisting, it's rooted, and that's another logjam where you're trying to work your way past people, and it's hard to yell on your left when nobody can breathe because you're running uphill. And then it opens up after that, and you can kind of get around people, and it's a little bit easier to navigate.
And a comment from Crispin in the chat room. Crispin says, even the entry process is complicated. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, the entry process is...
Is it Barkley level confusing and deep?
No, it's not that bad. They post the application online. It is still done via snail mail. So you download the application. It is first come, first serve via snail mail. So they also accept bribes. All the bribes go to the foundation, which is used for scholarships and trail putting on the race. It doesn't go into the pockets of the organizers. So it's a little black box in that manner, in that like nobody really knows how much of a bribe to put in. Like, people have asked me, and I have no idea. I literally have no idea. But probably a couple $100 to, plus the $90 entry fee. You can also buy your way in at the dinner on Friday night.
Right.
There's an auction. They auction off 2 entries to that year's race. But yeah, it's first come, first serve via snail mail. If you run in the top, I want to say 400 overall, regardless of where you start, you automatically re-qualify for the invitational section the following year.
Oh, that's cool.
So on top of the whole handicaps, there are 2 sections. There's the invitational section, which is the first 700 runners, and then there's the runner section, which is the next 700 or 800. And each of those go AAA to scratch. So the winners and the black shirts obviously only come out of the invitational group because they start
top 35, first. Right?
Top 35 are black shirts. So
can they wear do they show up in their black shirts? Like, do they make it known from the previous year? Like, I have a black shirt and they show up?
No, it's like an unwritten rule. You don't wear the black shirt outside of, there's 2 days a year you can wear the black shirt. And it's like Dipsea after the race when you've earned it, and to like the beer booth at the Fall Arts Festival. And that's basically it. Otherwise, you're supposed
It's good to know. It's good to know when I get my black shirt.
Yeah, you're right.
I've literally never seen anybody around Mill Valley wearing a black shirt outside of those 2 days.
Wow. I love this stuff. I love this like history and sort of unspoken etiquette. Yeah, there's a culture to this thing.
Yeah, there's like a lore behind it.
There's a lore.
So you're saying it's first come, first serve via
Snail.
snail mail. So if I'm in Canada and that's where I live and I'm sending okay,
Yeah.
that answers my question.
Does it
then.
have to be
Godspeed?
Does it have to be stamped on a certain day, or does it have to arrive on a certain day?
It's when it arrives.
Wow.
And they said so, and they have a PO box at the Mill Valley Post Office. And a couple years ago, they had to stop. They told people don't bother taking it directly there because they will not put it straight in our mailbox.
That was my next question.
Yeah, they will
Yeah.
not put it straight in the mailbox. So you've got to drop it in the mail. There have been stories of people driving to Petaluma, which is like the regional sorting center, to drop it there, so it doesn't have to get there and then go back. Yeah, people are.
I love it.
Yeah, I think
Me too.
it's one of the hardest parts about the race is getting it.
And Canada, for example, if you were to send it in post, USPS or something,
I would never
again,
get in.
Put in a bribe.
Yeah.
exactly.
Just
But
like
in
you really-
Canadian,
maple
really-
syrup.
in Canadian dollars or US, like that,
Just like an envelope full of toonies.
just toonies.
Yeah, if you really want in, that's the way to get your spot.
And
Just
if
to
it arrives
put in a
early,
box.
it's not counted, correct? It has to
do you
arrive
mean?
on, like, if it comes the day before.
I'm guessing
Oh,
they have the downloadable
Well, you
thing.
can't. It's the
Oh, the
window's
application.
open as soon as the application is posted.
Got it.
So you can't send it before it's down. Before it's posted.
That makes perfect sense.
Crispin says, I got in via Sob Story this year.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's also the sob stories. So
What is that?
You have like some remarkable story. You know, your grandfather ran the race for 10 years, and you want to uphold his legacy, or stuff like that.
And
There's,
do they have to be real?
yeah, they
Okay.
should probably be verifiable.
Okay.
I think the committee, that's another way you can get in, is if you've got a really good story.
There's the Bruce Stern movie On the Edge. So this is one that I watched as a young teen. I imagine even just bringing that up is like a Dipsea Racer is like, yeah, okay, cool, yeah, we get it. You watched a movie. Is it
It's
true to
entertaining.
form? Is it entertaining? Is there any
Yeah,
truth
yeah.
to some of the training and like
Yeah,
the amount it meant to
it's
him?
funny, like knowing the course and having grown up in Marin, like that race definitely does not take place in a lot of the places the actual Dipsea occurs.
Mhm.
But yeah, I mean, that's a great way to kind of see it, what it means to people, the whole idea of the handicapping, and it also shows how much it means to a lot of people.
Right.
Like there's that level of involvement and dedication to this race that people have, and it's pretty remarkable.
It's a 6.3?
Officially 7.4.
Okay.
I've never had my GPS read over 7.
Okay.
So there's that. That's part of the shortcuts.
Shortcut.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
That's
But
exactly
if you
why
look,
I'm like, there's a question mark. on it.
Stravas from the race, it's right around 6.7, 6.8 miles
Okay.
on the GPS.
I like
Do you post your Strava from the race or do you keep it
private
Secret.
secret.
Oh,
So yeah, everything's public.
Okay. So we know all of Alex Varner's secrets, shortcuts, and
yeah, you just have to run as fast as Alex.
Yeah.
To, like, get that time.
it's just
though.
not really going to happen. So we've got a lot of the lore. Some of it, we've touched on some of it. If there are any questions about additional intricacies that maybe we didn't touch on, please ask them into the chat room, because I'm sure there's a dozen things that I'd love to know more info on that I'm not going to ask here in the main show, because I want to start talking to Alex about his performances. This weekend, Alex technically finished third, but it sounds like he had the fastest time and has set the fastest time 9 times before, or 8 times before. This is now the 9th time he has set the fastest time. So, Alex, can you sort of explain to me how that works? Because reading all the post-race articles and stuff like, oh, Alex Varner came in third and set the fastest time, it's really weird to read that compared to what we're used to. So what have you done in the past? What are these 9 times? Why are they the fastest compared to other things? And have you ever won it? Like, has it ever worked out in your favor?
I've never won the race. I started running it as an 18-year-old, so I had 1 minute that year, and I was in scratch with 0 minute head start. Now I've gotten 1 minute back. I got that when I turned 31. The fastest time, so they award top 35. First person across the line wins. We'll start there.
Yep.
From the invitational section, that's how you have to run out of there to win. First person across the line wins. Top 35 get black shirts. They give out a high school trophy for first guy and girl finisher in high school.
18
which is
or
pretty
under,
cool.
or I
Just
guess
in high school.
high
Just
school,
in high
yeah.
school. They give out a family trophy, which is first 2 people from the same family. So it could be
Oh,
husband,
that's
wife.
cool.
This year, Diana Fitzpatrick and her daughter Katie won it. Tiff Etch was deeply involved with Western States. So that was cool to see them win it.
That's really cool.
Excuse me. And then they give out a team title, which is top 5 scoring members on points, so similar to cross country. I think it's points. And then they give out the fastest time awards to the fastest man and the fastest woman who have the fastest clock time on the day. And that can happen regardless of where you finish. So this year, I've won that award 9 times. So the way to think about it is if we'd all started at the same time, I would have won the race 9 times. But we don't all start at the same time, so
Correct.
I've definitely won the race. And if you go on like the Dipsea website and look at the results, they have the age, they have your start group, they have your actual time and your actual place, and then they have your clock time and clock place. So on the website, I finished 3rd. But if you look next to my time, it says actual time, and it was 49:29, and it says /1. So I had fastest actual time on the day. The guy who won, who's 62, still ran the 32nd fastest time on the day.
Wow.
Out of 1,500 people.
Wow.
And the guy who finished 2nd ran the 28th fastest time on the day. So they're fast.
Jeez.
Absolutely and relatively.
Wow.
So that's how it works. That I've run the fastest time 9 times and never won the race. This year was more special than the last 8 because this is the first time anybody's ever won 9 fastest time awards in the history of the race. I had been thinking about this for 11 years, and I was really, really excited that it finally happened. So I had a little bit more pressure on myself, knowing kind of that was an added element to it. But yeah, it was good. It was hot, and it was fun.
Yeah, talk about well, first of all, congratulations being the first to win 9th. Man, I know. I'm so sorry. The first to finish 9 fastest times, or first to get that many awards. You are now a part of the race's lore. You know, that's just everything we've talked about for the last 40 minutes leads me to wanted to ask that. Do you want to become part of the lore? And you have. So now there will be no other first winner of 9 fastest awards. Like, that's you. I think that's fantastic, man. Like, you're a part of this thing. You are now part of it.
Yeah, it's fun. I didn't know what I was getting into the first time I did it, and it just kind of bit me. And it's not let go. Like, it's funny. My college reunions are always on the 2nd Sunday in June, and as long as they're there, I'll never go. Like, I'll always be at this race. So there's there's that sort of element to it where it's something you look forward to for pretty much the entire year.
I'm assuming you're going to continue to run it for as long as you can.
Yes.
Or as long as they let you in.
Yes, that's the goal. There's a guy that his nickname is the Dipsea Demon. His name was Jack Kirk, and he ran it like 75 years in a row.
Wow.
I was lucky enough to see him on course a couple of times, but he passed away. But he was running it at like age 99. I mean, wow. I don't know how. Like, he was. Yeah, the oldest guy this year was 82, and the youngest was 7. So people do really all ages run it.
That's so cool.
That's one of the things that I think was the first thing I learned was just the age gap between youngest and oldest starter of this race. Year after year, it's always just a gap like that. That is,
and it's fun because they start together.
That's so crazy. Like, it's because of the handicaps, right?
And 74 and over on your male, you start in the same group, and girls 7 and under and 66 and over start in the same group.
That's something I want to see.
Yeah, it's fun. It's really cool.
Is your mindset, I cannot wait to crush them? Like the kids and our seniors, like you don't have to answer that.
I think you just did answer that.
Yeah, everybody. If as a young person in the race, anybody who's young and wants to do well knows that they're got to pass a lot of people, and you can't really be merciful about it, so to speak. Yeah. They've already got handicaps. They've started ahead of you. Like, that's how it is.
Do you have a catchphrase as you pass someone, like pew pew, or you just got
no
Varner?
Gus ran with a my friend Gus ran with a bike horn one year, and you could hear him down the trail.
Gibbs?
Yeah, Gus Gibbs. So you
He
could hear him
ran
down
he ran Tiger Claw, and he's a joy to be around. And
Yeah.
I wish he had brought a horn to Tiger Claw.
If
You
he
could
comes
hear him
back
coming
next
down,
year,
'cause,
we'll
like,
make him bring one.
There was a year where like I gapped him on the up, and I could hear him just getting back closer and closer to me all the way down. I could hear the horn slowly getting louder.
It's hilarious. It's awesome. It also is like, oh man, you're just giving away your position. So now Alex is like, oh, I gotta push harder, you know.
But when there's 700 people to pass, it's much easier to press that horn than it is to say on your left every 4 steps, especially when you're going uphill.
That is actually brilliant. You're using
Yeah.
so much less oxygen.
Yeah. And it's nice. Like people are out there, they know that they're going to get passed. And I have a lot of friends on the course, and even people I don't know will yell when I go by them. They will yell up ahead for me and say, you know,
That's
Varner's
cool.
coming through, move to the right. And it's hugely helpful and highly appreciated.
Damn, that's awesome. I want to get to some of these live questions too during this main show. What do we got?
Yeah, great question from Nathaniel in the chat room. They asked, which of your Dipsea finishes is the most memorable and why?
This one is probably, I think the one I was most nervous for was when I ran 4 fastest times in a row. I ended up getting 6 in a row, but prior to that, nobody had won more than 3 consecutively.
Oh wow.
So I ran, and I broke my good friend Mark McManus. It's a little confusing. There was Mark McManus and there was Mike McManus.
Okay.
And Mike, I believe now works at Hoka. And he'd ran like 3 fastest times and then a 2-year break and then 3 more fastest times and then a year or 2 break and then 2 more fastest times for 8 total. And then my friend Mark had run 3 in a row, and I ran my fastest time in what would have been his 4th. He and I finished 2nd and 3rd that year. We were on the same finishing straight together, which was cool. He started a minute ahead of me, so I never caught him, but I ran more than a minute. I closed the minute. You know, I got within a minute of him at the finish, which meant that I had the fastest time. So running 4 in a row was very special, and then this year 9 was very special as well.
Do you anticipate winning at some point as you get older, maybe being able to retain some of the speed that you're rocking now? Do you think that a win is in your future?
I hope so. That's hard to say, but I have a lot of people who told me that I'm their sentimental favorite until I get the monkey off or the elephant off everyone's back. But it might be 20 years. I think it very well might be before I'm able to, you know, have the right combination of speed and handicap minutes to win it. And
Damn.
that's okay.
I love that though. Like that's, man, I'm just so into this. This is the coolest thing. And you're our sentimental favorite for sure. I have to be able to say the word sentimental, but Alex has a very special place in our heart. So anyone else that's running Dipsea, just let him go. Just let him pass. Man, I'm so excited by this race. I know that you have a real long connection with it. I can only imagine the number of other people that have a deeper connection to it, that have been around much longer and have been a part of this race. Is there a community that comes out to support just this race? Like, does Mill Valley come out in full force? Are there volunteers? Is there aid stations? Like, how does the community come out to support?
Very much so. Yeah, I think there was actually, funny enough, like an article written last week on cities to go watch the local race, and number 1 was Mill Valley and Dipsea. And it was like, there was like Falmouth Road Race on there and a couple others, but it was just funny to see Mill Valley at the top like the week before the race. So yeah, there's a huge group of people. Volunteers are fantastic. There are a couple of water aid stations along the way, and that's about it. There's no ultra aid stations with food or anything, just water and Gatorade. But yeah, it's a very devoted volunteer corps. The committee is several members on the Dipsea committee who ultimately decide whether or not you get in. And, you know, they process the sob stories and the bribes and, you know, ensure that the race is running as it should. So yeah, a very, very large group of devoted. I know people who only, this is the only running race they run.
Right.
They bike or they climb or boat or what have you. And this is the one running race that they do every year.
Do you have goals of becoming a part of the race, like becoming a part of that committee, or being able to help give back to it in future? Is that something that you would love to have happen?
I'd love to be on the committee at some point. I think because I hope to run it every year, I like that kind of rules me out of volunteering.
Sure.
But I would love to be part of that committee and kind of shape and be a steward for the event.
Is the committee known? So are they approached in town for months in advance? Like, hey, Bob, have you gotten my application? Like any of that stuff.
I don't know that they are known.
Okay.
The members are known. Beyond that, I don't know what their kind of daily interaction is with people.
Regular folk.
Yeah.
If you could just give us their addresses, that would be great. I mean, I'm so excited for you because just kind of hearing your connection to it, it's obviously very special to you, but also knowing how far you've come within the race, how well you've done within the race. It's such a really neat thing. And even though that we haven't been able to catch up for years now, haven't been able to get you on the show for a long time, it's really cool to see that you've been up to nothing but good. Dad, you've got a beautiful daughter and wonderful place still in California, and you're doing some amazing things, man, and it's really cool to sort of follow along. I'm really glad that you were able to take tonight to join us. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I am too. Been a blast.
We are going to move into our after show with Alex Varner. We're going to talk to him maybe a little bit more about some of this Dipsea stuff, and that is for our Patreon crew. So if you'd like to join us, all you got to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner, and all levels get access to all of our after shows. But before we move into the after show, we have a couple things that we're going to do. One is with Alex, and then two, we're going to do our crew member of the week. Alex, it's been so long since we've had him on the show. I thought we should probably do the quickie question quiz again because his answers may have changed. I don't know if we actually ever did the quickie question quiz with him when we used to have him on years ago. So I thought this would be perfect. So Alex, the drill is simple. It's a list of 10 or 100 questions. I'm not quite sure. I can't count them out. They're very simple. Answer with the first thing that comes to your mind. When you are ready, give me a thumbs up and we'll just rip on through.
Go for it.
What was your very first race?
Some high school cross-country race.
Favorite place to run currently?
Mount Tam.
Road or trails?
Trails.
Bucket list race?
Dipsea.
Favorite running movie?
Oh, I like the Prefontaine movies.
Guilty pleasure TV show?
Oh, what are we? Veep isn't that guilty, but it's
still a good show.
Yeah.
So sad it's gone. Favorite pre-race meal?
I ate piggy bars before.
Post-race indulgence?
Beer and donuts.
And finally, what are your current running kicks? Or even more specifically, what did you run Dipsea in?
I ran Dipsea in the Nike Zoom Streak LT2, which has been discontinued for a couple of years. I found a supplier on eBay who sold me like 5 pairs. So I've got like the Dipsea shoe for the next 10 years. But they updated it and it's changed and it doesn't quite fit the race as well as it used to. So I'm lucky to have the pairs I've got. I have to make sure they last as long as possible.
That's awesome. I love that. I love it. You are the Nike king. Like anytime I talk about a Nike shoe, I remember that you'd be like, dude, I've got like 6 versions. I got the Korean pair. I've got the pair that was only in Europe for a certain amount of time. That's really cool. You found your shoe and you've got a stockpile. Perfect.
Yeah.
Congratulations. You passed the quickie question quiz.
Thank you.
Can you let everyone know where they can find you on social media or any shout outs to websites or whatever you might need to promote? Where can they follow up?
Sponsor Nike Trail Running, Picky Bars. Everything is AF Varner. AF is in Frank, VARNER. That's Twitter and Instagram. And I'm on Facebook, but I use that less and less.
Fantastic. A wonderful guest tonight, Alex Varner. Awesome to have him back on the show and really great to get a little bit of an education on the Dipsea.
Yeah.
And sure enough, this is now my favorite thing on the planet.
The chat room is also loving it.
Yeah, I'm not going to stop talking about it. I'm letting you know that
minds.
now for the next month or two.
Good. That means you'll stop talking about Tiger Claw for like a week.
If you would like to join us in the after show with a little bit more Alex Varner, all you got to do is go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner, as I mentioned before. But before we even get to that, every week now we like to honor a member of our viewing audience, those who support us and watch this show or watch our reviews or whatever, in our crew member of the week. Basically, someone that's going out crushing their goals, doing something pretty cool and special that week. We like to honor them by mentioning what they did this week at each show. Kim, who is this week's GR crew member?
This week's GR crew member of the week is our one and only Mr. Brian Sands. Brian actually flew up to the Northwest. We got to see Brian this weekend.
Yes.
And he crushed his 14.5 mile race out at Cougar Mountain, where we run often. Brian's come back from terrible injury that he's been trying to cope with, and he killed it this weekend. We're really proud of Brian.
He's incredibly inspiring, has been for as long as we've known him, and this weekend was no different, coming back from his Achilles injury. So congratulations, Brian Sands. We really appreciate you and what you do for this community, and we'd like to honor you tonight. We also just wanted to send a quick shout out, send our love and our well wishes and support to Gabe. Obviously, the news has been sort of making the rounds, and we want to send all of our love and support to both Gabe and Justin and their family and friends. It's really hard to hear what's been going on with them, but she's been nothing but incredibly inspiring to the entire running community. So yeah, just sending all of our love, and just wanted to take a second to recognize her husband, and the whole community. So thank you, everyone. We'll see you guys in the after show. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and part of the hardest. I know I am. Wonderful show tonight. Very excited for next week's show too. Thanks, everyone. See you in the after show.
Bye.